Hey, this is Bill DeWeese with Long Strange Journey, and this is another video in the series where we are focusing on fishing plans and building a fishing plan and downloading it into your navigation unit to kind of give you if you do a spot dissection or a fishing plan ahead of fishing a new area and you're going to use traditional Google Maps and such. There's a series on that that I put together. I have a playlist on my channel. But specifically, what I'm going to do today is talk about the Saltstrong smart fishing spots. So if you're not familiar with Saltstrong, Saltstrong is a great organization for really providing a vast amount of information on various types of fishing. It's obviously its strengths are in inshore fishing, but also just myriad methods and locations. The Saltstrong community, this is a public YouTube video, but this community is a membership-based community. But if you're new to fishing or fairly young in the process of learning how to master certain types of fishing and regions and sections and techniques and strategies, everything from understanding tides and currents to understanding fish habitat and fish biology and how to take advantage of that when you are fishing. This can jumpstart you in that process, and it's a great community to be involved with, both from a relational perspective. I've connected with a number of people over the last 5 years, and some of them I fish with now on multiple times a month, and free dive and scuba and boating and just all kinds of things. They do a lot of social interactions like meetups as well as local chapter-based things. But one of the things we're going to look at here specifically is a product that they've put together called Smart Fishing Spots. So if you go to Saltstrong, the basic Saltstrong community, and you're a paid member, and you can get access to quite a number of things, and fishing reports, spot dissections, very detailed kind of one-stop shopping for tides and currents and salooners and everything. A ton of mastery courses to do mastery level education or information on species or techniques or strategies and regions. And the spot dissections does a really good job with the regions. And there's just a great community. It just literally is a fishing community. So if you're a fishing nut and you want to get better at it, especially if you're new, this is a great thing. I'm going to go to Smart Fishing Spots. And Smart Fishing Spots is, what we used to do is we used to bring up Google Earth, right? And with Google Earth, we would go and find things that were areas of interest in a place that we wanted to fish, and you would find all kinds of structure and elements that you want to go and target. And that's a place that you could actually use Google Earth to find structure and use that structure or figure out where you've got cuts and passes and deep holes in the wintertime, and where you find different drop-offs between depths. So you can go through here, and what I do in that session, and if you go back through and look at my playlists on this channel, you'll see a playlist for Hitchhiker's Guide to a GPS-based fishing plan. And it shows you how to take a Google Earth view of things and create a number of different things. I won't belabor that here because we want to get right down to business, and I've already talked enough. What we're going to focus on here is a lot of things that are really cool, specific to fishing, right? You get a lot of aerial data with Google Earth, and with Bing Maps and things like that, MapQuest. But here you're able to actually do that all in one tool using Smart Fishing Spots, right? So this is by default, just looks like just some standard weather map. But you can turn on a number of critical layers that allow you to build plans around the fishing spots that you are specifically wanting to fish. So you can do a Google Earth satellite view, you can do a shaded relief view, and you can do sonar with high res, and you can get some very detailed areas. I'm looking here specifically at Tampa Bay just because it's in my backyard. But you can also turn on oyster beds, you can turn on seagrass, you can list artificial reefs. Now you don't want to go crazy here because you'll put details that can make things difficult for you. But you can also actually mimic these things and create your own fishing plan. And that's kind of what we're going to do here today. So I'm picking this artificial reef here as an example. This is Bahia Reef here in Tampa Bay. And I'm going to turn off artificial reefs because I basically just used it to find it. And I'm really going to turn off seagrass and oyster beds because let's just think for a second here that I'm actually going to target an area that is kind of bottom fishing for snapper, sheep's head, grouper, things like that. So, you know, we're looking at somewhere between 15 to 30 feet of water here. This is not like an inshore setting. But what I want to do is I want to now start creating some things that help me leverage the fact that I have access to all this data, like all this contour data. And so I'm going to go and turn off my layers or dismiss my layers and leave them as they are. And I'm going to come over here to the trails and tracks and tools and routes. So you can do routes, you can do tracks, and you can do waypoints. Now, let's start with waypoints. Waypoints are very simple concept, right? It's a point on a map indicated by a GPS location and you give it a name. It's really that simple. A route is actually a collection of waypoints, and depending upon your chart plotter, right, routes and tracks, and in my case I use Lowrance. Lowrance uses a term called trails. In the Lowrance vernacular, a route is something that you create on the unit itself using your own pinpointing of locations on the sonar screen. And for example, in the Lowrance environment with something like a Ghost or something like a motor guide trolling motor, you can send that route to the trolling motor and say, hey, go run that route for me. Right, but with respect to Lowrance, they have a thing called trails. So trails is actually you creating a route on the water by just having the chart plotter leave a trail as you go along. I use trails a lot on my chart plotter. A good example of it was we were fishing in Isla Morada in the Keys this past October, and in the open bays up behind Isla Morada heading into Florida Bay, there were just a massive number of crab traps everywhere. Crab trap buoys every 15 feet. It was crazy. But what we had was I left a trail during the day indicating where those crab traps were. So when I came home in the evening from, say, Rabbit Key, a long run, I had a pink trail that I left on my screen because you've left yourself a trail. So if you're in an area where you have discovered a clear path in a shallow area and you've run it before, if you leave a trail, you now have a permanent trail in your chart pod that you can follow. So there's a little bit of overlap between routes, tracks, and trails, and it depends on what your unit is as to which it will be best. But we'll create a route here, and also I'm going to do something like what I call a hybrid, which I will create a route in SaltStrong. I'll bring that into Google Earth, and then I will add some waypoints to that route. And I kind of like that mode because it gives me some additional capabilities. And so I'm going to do route, or let's do a waypoint first. We'll just do a series of waypoints. So we're going to add a waypoint, and I'll pick this little indentation in the bottom where it's got a little bit of a culvert, some bridge pile concrete or something, and then I will give it a name, and it will be try, let's just do AAA try waypoint 1. Okay, so I've saved that. So now that I've got that waypoint, right? And then I'm going to do another waypoint I'll add. We're not going to belabor this. So we'll save that waypoint and we'll say AAA try waypoint 2. And we'll save that. So we got 2 waypoints that we've created and saved, right? So now I'll clear all of this and proceed. And I've got those saved, right? So if I go, I can pull those up later and we'll do so. But I'm going to also then begin by adding a route. And the only thing that I would say here as sort of a tip and a trick is, like you saw with the waypoint, a bubble comes up that lets you manipulate that waypoint. Same is true with routes. And if you're going to do a route or waypoints close together, sometimes that bubble can get in the way. So when I say a new route, I'm going to go ahead and create a route. I'm going to go from my bottom right, like I'll go down here. Let's say I want to explore this whole area. So I will go create a route, and I will go to the next point. Okay, so I'm going to create a route. I'm going to focus on this rubble. So I'm going to start here. And you'll notice that bubble showed up with the information on that. And I'm going to go up, and I'm going to explore. And what this is going to be, again, is a route. And a route is actually a collection of waypoints. In fact, if you look carefully, you could see the dotted lines. So if I were going to fish this location, and I had the water all to myself, this is kind of the pattern in which I would perhaps start doing my side scanning and bottom scanning. And so I'm going to just keep going and building my routes, and it's going to create kind of a list of routes that we can use on the water, a list of waypoints that we can use on the water, and we can run this route. And so we're going to finish the route, and we will save the route, and we're going to give it a AAA route, or try, or let's see, route 1. So we created a route, we've created some waypoints, right? And then let's go ahead and look at what a track is. So now I can hit clear, proceed, and I can do tracks. So I can record a track. And again, a track follows you, so it's not actually going to be as effective as what we're trying to do. We're not trying to follow something. We wanted to create a route that's going to, and again, in my Lowrance unit, this would be called a trail. But the principal focus is on waypoints and routes. And so what you can do here is you can set these routes, and what I've got here, for example, if I go back to my load route and I select my AAA route 1, load route. So now I got my route. You can see that we built this route, and the route is set up with kind of a pattern that we're going to run with our side scan, and we're going to look over this structure with side and down scan simultaneously. We're going to look for bottom makeup. We're going to look at this structure and find these locations. Because you see that red dot, that's a known waypoint for an artificial reef. But actually, there's no structure there. So when you go and you get your data from, say, the internet about artificial reef points, they're not always accurate. Like this one up here in the top is sitting right on top of the structure. This one is off the structure. So sometimes if you just go to a waypoint and you just start fishing it, you might actually be off, or it could be sanded over in that area. So you really want to take advantage of a route like this, because you've now highlighted the principal area, and now you can start and you can indicate, use your side scan and down scan as you move slowly over this and identify the actual physical structure below you. And that's actually a really good way of looking at it, and this is why building routes is actually important. Okay, so I've got my route and I've got my waypoints. Now the waypoints, I can actually add a waypoint to this route. So I can go to the beginning of this and I can say, like, this is the starting point. I can add a waypoint and I can call it start. And you could also do this in Google Earth, but we're going to do it this way. Waypoint was saved. All right. So, and then we can just say, now I've got a waypoint. And the reason why that's actually kind of important is because the waypoint will allow you to, so we got a start here and we got all of that, right? So now if we go to waypoints and we routes and we say load, select a route, we got our route in place, right? And we've got all of that data, and we can clear this. And okay, so now that we've done this, I've cleared everything. So if we go to waypoints now, I've done a clear of the waypoints and I've done a clear of my route. So I'm going to go to routes and I'm going to say load, and I'm going to load my tri-route, the AA route 1, right? So load the route. So there's the route. Now what we're going to add to this route is we're going to add a waypoint. And the reason why that's important is because the waypoint will allow us to find the route. So we called this AAA Route 1, right? And we also earlier created some waypoints. But I'm going to switch gears to waypoints. I'm going to go to waypoint and I'm going to do an add waypoint. And I'm going to go down here to the start of my route, which I'm going to follow. And I'm going to click here and I'm going to say AAA start waypoint. This will make clearer sense in a minute. AAA route start waypoint. So I've got route and I've got a waypoint, which is the start of that route. Okay, so my waypoint is saved. Now I can now go and I can clear or load waypoints. So if I select, and we can clear all of this, right? This is all saved in this Strong data under your profile, and I can go to routes and I can say clear, and it's all saved, right? So I can load the routes that I want, AAA route, load that route, and I can then say waypoints, load AAA route start waypoint. So I'm going to load that waypoint. So now I've got my start route and I've got my start point of my route and my entire route. So again, I'm going to basically go here and I'm going to begin mowing the lawn with my side scan. I'm going to go up and down, and you could continue this forever, but you've got your points in your route and your route will show up, right? So let's go ahead now and go into our routes again, and we're now going to do a export. I'm selecting routes, but you can go under waypoints and you could export as well, right? So I can pick this AAA route start, and these are just my waypoints, and I can export that. But I also can go here and I'm going to load. I got my load. Okay, so I'm going to go to routes and I'm going to do an export. I'm going to select the AAA route that I've built, and I've got decimal degrees, and I've got degrees, minutes, and seconds, or I got degrees and decimal minutes. So we're going to do full decimal degrees, and we're going to export that as a GPX. Now I'm going to actually export it two ways. I'm going to export it as a GPX, which you'll see that download, and I'm going to export it as a KML file. And that way we can see that in Google Earth as well. And we can manipulate it in Google Earth if we need to, right? So let's go ahead and cancel that. Now let's go ahead into GPX and let's bring that up in an editor and take a look at what we got. So we have the track points in each one of our routes, right? And if we click on that as a, if we click on that as a KML, it'll bring that up in Google Earth. And there we go. This is the route that we have created. There was a lot of people fishing that day when they took this photograph. You got a lot of boats fishing here. This Bahia Reef is actually quite popular. So we've got the route that we built. This is equivalent to the route that we've just basically set up here. It's the exact same route. But notice we don't have that start waypoint. That's a separate entity, right? So if we go to waypoints and we say waypoints, we can pick that AAA route start waypoint and we can say export, right? So when that comes over, it comes over as a GPX. And you can import and export, but this export is only going to give you the GPX. But we have the waypoint export, and I'm going to rename that to this AAA start route so I know which one it maps to, because it goes to this particular one. So right click, show in full. So I'm going to call this AAA route start waypoint. And the reason why, this will make sense a little bit later on, but you've got the Route 1 GPX route, and we've got the route start waypoint. And the reason why is we want a waypoint to start the route, and that's because that waypoint will be easier to find. Waypoints will be easier to find in some of your chart plotters. Certainly in the Lowrance Chartplotter, you can sometimes find these under trails, and sometimes they can be difficult to find. Waypoints are very easy to find and search by name. So this will be the start of your waypoint, right? So basically, I'm combining that. Okay, so when we exported the AAA route, as I mentioned, we also exported it as a KML, and that means it's available in Google Earth. And that's what we kind of want to be able to do as well. And I'll show you why that's kind of important. So there is the Google route, or the route that we did as seen in Google Google Maps. Google, if you create a route in Google, it's actually called a path. This is where this gets a little crazy, because there's no like standard way of representing a path, a route, a trail. Waypoints are pretty common, and everybody refers to a waypoint as a place on the earth indicated by a name in a Latin lawn, right? And then some notes about it. But routes and trails and paths are a completely different thing. They vary significantly between different units. So what we did back here was, again, we exported a route, and we also exported a waypoint, and we couldn't do them at the same point because they are two different entities inside of SaltStrong. And so we ended up exporting a GPX file and exporting a waypoint. Now, you can simply and quickly, easily, just take those two files and include them in the data set that you import into your unit. GPX is your GPX exchange. This is basically, as we showed before, this is basically KML, or excuse me, XML. And XML is just basically a language for representing tags and lengths and data and all of that. And this data here contains a name for a route, and then a set of track points that make up the route. A waypoint GPX is just simply a waypoint, right? So you've got your lat and lon, and you got information about it and your name, but they're two different structures. And so what we want to do also, what you can do, is we can combine them. And so that's why we created the KML. We don't want to load this again because we've already loaded it once. There we go. So I can actually, now that I've imported that outbound KML into Google Earth, I can actually bring up and I can create my own waypoints, right? So I can create any kind of waypoint, and whatever it matters, it doesn't matter. It's going to show up differently probably on your chart, and we're going to call this one Start AAA Start of Route. So again, I've got a route, and that's good. You can see the white line, and that'll show up on your chart plotter as the line that your chart plotter uses to represent it. But in addition to that represented line, I've also got a waypoint, and that waypoint is infinitely easier to find inside of your chart plotter depending upon variability, because a waypoint is a waypoint is a waypoint, right? It's no different than you pushing on your screen and saying drop a waypoint. You're just putting the waypoint in advance. Because that's part of this route, right? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to save it to my places. And so I now have AA route, and AA route contains the route in Google Earth, and it contains the start of route. So I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to do a save place as. I'll keep with downloads, and I'll put AAA route1.kml. KML, KMZ, same essential thing. If you've got a very big KML file, like all of the Everglades, it's going to be huge, and so KMZ just compresses it. So it's just gzipped. Here we got a really small route, and it's called, we're going to use the KML format. So you can use KML or KMZ, but here it's small, so we're going to use KML. So we save that into our downloads folder, and so now I've got that route. Now if I click on that, it's going to bring it right back up. We don't want to do that, so I'm going to open it up in a text editor, Notepad. So now you can see the yellow push pin, we got the Google Map files, this is the pink blank PNG, the icon that we're using, but your chart plotter will override that with whatever your particular chart plotter uses as its default, because it's not going to find that particular thing. And then you've got the route, and here's the sequence. This is how the KML produces it as its output. It's a sequence of track points, of coordinates. And then you've got your actual start of route waypoint. So you've got a waypoint, which Google is calling place mark, and then you've got your route. Okay, so we've got all that together, but that's a KML. Now, that's a KML is not something that most chart plotters, most smartphone apps, things like Garmin Active Captain and Navionics and others. I use a backcountry navigator application on my phone for both backcountry hiking as well as boating. It will take KMLs directly. Most GPX units on your boat will prefer a GPX file. You can see these KMLs on my Lowrance. You cannot import them. You can only get the import option if you select GPX. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of my favorite tools, which I use often and I use in the other video series, is GPS Visualizer. So GPS Visualizer is a tool that's a really awesome tool, and we're going to go to the top and we're going to say convert a file, and we're going to convert a GPS file to plain text or GPX, and you can output format it. So we're going to select GPX as our output format, and then if you've got just a simple set of name, description, and Latin longs, you can just put them in here and hit convert. But we have actually got a Google KML file, so we're going to say choose files. We're going to go to downloads. We're going to pick our AAA route KML. And then we're going to now say convert. That's going to produce a GPX file. We're going to download that GPX file, and the very first thing we're going to do is F2, copy. We're going to give it a much better name. Okay, so that's now the GPX. So we now have we've downloaded directly from Saltstrong Smart Fishing Spots a starting waypoint and a GPX route. And now we've created this hybrid thing, which is a GPX file, which contains both the start of route with its Latin long. We've just basically used this to create one thing that has both, because there's no reason why you can't have both. And so this gives us a nice waypoint in addition to our track, because our track or route or path is what we're going to follow, but we want to get to the head of that snake to begin the process of following it. So now I basically have three different things. So I'm going to take out my transfer disk, which is a formatted micro SD card, and I'll show you that on the other video, and we'll set this up to be able to transfer this data over. All right, so we've put the laptop away. We've transferred our data. This is a micro SD card reader. This is a micro SD card for Lowrance, and I think also my older Garmin that I had. You had to have 32 gig maximum, formatted FAT32, which you would do on a Windows PC. I guess you can do it with a Mac too. I'm a Mac illiterate. So I've got two card slots in here, and this is what you see. We're in Tampa Bay here. This is Florida Marine Tracks. Go away. So we're roundabout. That's artificial reef. This is how Florida Marine Track shows the artificial reef or Baha'i Reef. And so we're going to kick out the CMAP chip. and we're going to put in our chip. We put the 3 files on there, the 2 GPX files that are direct exports. Now, one of them was an export of, and there's Navionics on that too, by the way, platinum or plus. Okay, so now what we're going to do is do our import. So we're going to go to Files, and we're going to go to, let's first go, by the way, to Waypoints and go to Routes. On Lowrance, a route is something that you create on the device. So I would do New Route, and I could start adding in waypoints. I can't do anything right now because I'm in my house and I don't have a GPS signal. Okay, so, but I can add and tap, and you can go back to the chart, and you can tap and tap and tap and create a route on the machine. And you can send that route to your trolling motor in certain circumstances. So a route for Lowrance is different than a route in SaltStrong. And that's different than a path in Google Earth. So waypoints are consistent. Routes and trails can be kind of squirrely unit to unit. So these are our trails. Now, normally I would say I want a trail like this. Dismal Key Path was a path that I did down in the Keys, and it is a path that I left and I created, right? So that's actually a path that I actually created while I was on the water. So we're actually going to add a trail, but really it's a SaltStrong route exported, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go to Storage. We're going to go to the bottom memory card. We're going to go to Xfer. I'm going to go to Xfer. And then under Xfer, I got SaltStrong. Under SaltStrong, I got 3 things. I got the waypoint that I exported from SaltStrong. I've got the route that I exported from SaltStrong. And if you recall, we exported the route from SaltStrong as KML, brought it into Google Earth, added the waypoint ourselves using Google Earth to mark the start of where we would want to consider the start of our route. And then we exported that as a KML, used GPS Visualizer to convert it to GPX, and now we have a GPX that contains both. That's actually important because, like, I could import the Google or the SaltStrong data for the route. Do you want to import it? Yes, I do, and it says File Import Complete. When I import the waypoints, sometimes you get an error. I don't know why you sometimes get an error and sometimes don't. Are you sure you want to import the waypoint? Yes, import failed. Import failed, and it gives you a brief indication as to why it failed. You can rewind the video and look at it and see if you ever see those things. I've worked with them a little bit on this, and I thought we got through this, but for some reason that kind of has crept back in, which is one of the reasons why. And so if we go take a look here now on the chart, and we now go to waypoints, and we go to trails, we'll see AA route, and we say show that you're going to see our zigzag route. Okay, here, let me change my cartography to something super duper basic. The onboard CMAP. There. So now you'll see our black route that we did, but you don't see our starting waypoint. But you do see all the interesting things that it shows you in the onboard CMAP data. Right, so let's go ahead and take that route that we did, back. Okay, let's take that route that we did, AA route, and we're going to delete it, because that's all we brought within was a route. Now we're going to go back to Storage, we're going to go back to bottom memory card, we're going to go back to Xfer, we're going to go to SaltStrong, and we're going to pick the hybrid route that we created, the AAA Route 1. This is the one that has the combination route and waypoint. And we did it through GPS Visualizer. So we got a good GPX, good import complete, close. And then now, I don't know why that bugs me like that. Why do you want to bug me? Chart. Now we have our start of route. Let's get this over here. We have the start of route, and then we have all of our zigzag route. So what that's interesting is because if we go to waypoints and we go to trails, we see our route, and you can say show route, right? And you could see the route, and then you could pick a point here and say go to cursor. But we also added our waypoint. So if you did something more complex, right? So we can now do find AAA. So if you had a network of these things, or you had a more complex set, there is our start of route. It's a waypoint. So now we can say go to, and then we can navigate to that, and then we can show it, but we can also set, I can't navigate here because I don't have GPS inside my house. And so, but I can show that, it'll take me right there. And you, again, go to cursor, or go to, you can click on that and say waypoint, and you could say go to whatever you want to do right here. But we can't do that now because we can't route in the house without a GPS. Okay, so that is it. Very long video, but I don't apologize for it because it's a reference video. You either want to learn how to do this and you need a walkthrough like this to speed the process up, or this is really boring and you checked out a very long time ago. I would appreciate any comments and feedback. If you have anything, appreciate your feedback. Thank you very much, and thank you for watching.